based policy advice. It is in this context that since September 2020, we have organized nearly 58 seminars, webinars on Fridays and sometimes on other days, discussing contemporary issues as far as policy is concerned. It is in that context we have Ambassador Manjeev Puri with us, who's been with the Indian Foreign Service. Details of his introduction would be given by the chairman of the session. The session today is being chaired by Dr. Arvind Vermani. Actually, Dr. Arvind Vermani needs no introduction. He is, of course, the chairman of EGROW Foundation, and he's also the president of the Forum for Strategic Initiatives. He's been a mentor, economic policy in FICCI, and member of RBI Technical Advisory Committee on Monetary Policy. Most importantly, he has been the Chief Economic Advisor of Government of India Ministry of Finance, and also earlier, he was the Executive Director at the IMF from 2009 to 2012. He has served as member Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, Director of the Indian Council for Research, EGROW, as its Chief Executive. He has published 35 journal articles and 20 book chapters and written more than 50 other working papers in the areas of macroeconomics, growth, finance, tax reform, international trade and tariffs, international relations, and national security strategy. He has also a few books to his credit. With that, I hand over the session to Dr. Arvind Vermani to chair the session. Dr. Vermani, please.
Thank you, Dr. Charan Singh. So let me quickly introduce. I'm sure there'll be a lot of, I guess our usual is about 40 minutes. Oh, but before I start, please, everybody put yourself on mute. Otherwise, it's very disturbing when some sounds start coming suddenly. Those who are listening, and of course, we'll have a Q&A session where you'll get a chance. So let me quickly introduce Ambassador Manjeev Singh Puri. He has served as Ambassador of India to European Union, Belgium, Luxembourg, and Nepal. He has also been in UN, as he was telling us earlier, for a long time, and also on the Security Council. He retired in 2019. His areas of expertise and interest include UN-related matters like sustainable development, ecology, climate change, etc., and also development and development goals, etc. He has a master's degree in management and BA honors in economics from St. Stephen's. With that, over to you, Mr. Puri.
Dr. Vermani, Dr. Charan Singh, and dear friends, a very big thank you from me to the EGROW Foundation for having invited me here. I must say I am delighted that I have got to know Professor Charan Singh and through that your lovely organization, and I've attended some of your webinars and been truly enriched by them. And in fact, as I said, the last one that you held on foreign policy, I'd be happy to add a few bits of my bit to all of that too, since it all concerns the same northern parts of India, China on one side, Nepal, a very important element there. Sir, please stop me when you think I've gone on too long. I want to thank all my friends from Nepal who are here. Sir, I must tell you, I'm not surprised at this. I'm not surprised because if you don't mind my saying so, the moment you announced a webinar on Nepal, most people said, we know the answers. That is India. That's the way we are. And that's why I titled this, The Country That We Think We Know. I'll try to put it from my perspective, different from the perspective that most of us have heard for a long time. And mine comes out of 3 years that I spent there recently. Before that, I'd been to Nepal only with prime ministers and their visits, etc. Doesn't really give you a chance to see and get to know what exactly is happening. The second thing, sir, if I may say, just a bit of fun, facetiously, all our friends in Nepal were here on time. It's not only that they are very good at that, but sir, Nepal is 15 minutes ahead of India. In everything that they do, we use the same thing, but they always add a little twist. If we use the word states, they use provinces. For every little thing, there's a synonym, another one, which of course you understand, but a different word must be used. That's Nepal for you. Perhaps the most important thing to understand, that it is a country which strives in various ways for this differentiation with India. And I think we should understand that and internalize it in our understanding of Nepal. So I have a short PPT. I'm going to put it on. Vivek, if I glitch up, please help me. So where do I start? Vivek, what do I press? Start.
Share button in the bottom of the screen.
I pressed the share button.
There should be
Can
option
you
to
see
share
it now?
screen.
Can you see it now? No, no. You're not able to see it now. Share. Yeah. No. Stop sharing. No. How do I tell it to start? We had gone
It's
through
visible
that.
now. It's visible now.
It's visible, but I can't
Yes.
see it.
It's go to the presentation.
Go to the presentation and open it right there. Yeah. Can you
Yeah,
all
yeah.
see it, please? You can see it.
Yes, sir, it is visible now.
Okay, let me go to that. So are these not the simple perceptions of Nepal and India? A small country, mountainous country, hill people, and similar to India. So first, for my friends in India, and I would like
Sir,
to
make it
include
full
you,
screen.
make it full screen. It's not full screen. How's it now?
You should start the slideshow. Go to the menu at the top. There is slideshow, sixth option in the menu, sixth or seventh. After file, go to the right. Get it more right.
Yeah. Slideshow.
Yeah.
And I say
Slideshow
from the beginning. Yep.
Yes.
Can you see it now? Full.
Yes, sir.
Vivek, can you see it? Okay, sir. Thank you. Sir, let's look at Nepal. What kind of a country is it? Small country? Well, it's the 48th largest country in the world. If it was located in Europe, it would be among the 5 largest countries. Nobody would call it a small country. Population, it used to be 26.4 million a few years back. Let's say about 28 million. It's also the 93rd largest country in the world, but it's a kind of rectangular country. If you fly from the eastern corner of Nepal to the western corner, the flight is longer than Delhi to Bombay. Is it a mountainous country, all hills, etc.? No, sir. 1/3 are high Himalayas, 1/3 are really hills, 3,000, 4,000 feet high, and 1/3 are just like the plains of India, especially what you see in Bihar and what you see in Uttar Pradesh. And this has a lot of implications, this last line of what exactly is Nepal. We'll come to the next slide. I think in India, we need to understand that when the Nepalese say and talk about, they're being proud, they've never been colonized. Yes, we know that the British Raj in India, and in fact, the British Raj or the British colonial power all over the world was such that even those who were not colonized, they understood what its power was. And that's exactly what happened in Nepal. Nepal theoretically was not colonized. I must point out that in the 1911 Darbar in Delhi, where Nepal was represented, the representative of Nepal, A, was not the king, he was indisposed and couldn't come. It was the prime minister, and he was not seated with the princes of India. So it's something that we also in India need to understand. We tend to just take it for granted that that's the way things were till perhaps India became independent. It really wasn't. There are lots of issues to all of this, the history. The country also is very proud of its distinct identity. And obviously, the biggest distinction that they always seek to underscore is that we are not Indian. I may be a little facetious and say this very simply. We in India, if we are overseas, we have no hesitation in saying, "Are ye to Nepali bhaiya hamare jaisa hi." But if you ask them, the first and most important thing they'll say is, "Look, we are Nepalese, we are not Indian." and they underscore this particular fact. And then something that which we all know, but which doesn't always come foremost to our mind. Nepal believes it's the yam between India and China, but we must always recognize that it is a large piece of land populated by 30 million people, which acts as a buffer in between India and China, running for approximately 1,500 kilometers. And I underscore that 1,500 kilometers. It's not a short distance. It's not a small amount. So, next point. Nepal has a largely Hindu population. It has a good relationship with syncretic Buddhist beliefs. And it may surprise you that the population of Hindus in Nepal, as per the last census, which was conducted 10 years back, was 81% to 79 in India. And so the point that I'd like to make. Hello. Is everything okay, Dr. Vermani?
Yeah, somebody was talking. Please mute yourself.
Okay, thank you. And this is something, sir, very often people in India don't really connect with and understand that the percentage of Hindus in Nepal could be larger than perhaps India. So this entire aspect becomes a very critical element of how these conversations actually take place. Now, the next point I want to make is, I think, very critical. And we need to understand this in the context of the changing Nepal. It's not just a changing India. Till 1990, Nepal did not issue passports. Till 1990, the only people who had been overseas were those who were in the Gurkha armies, mostly with the British Army, or a few very well-off people in the royal family, a very few handful of people who were very educated. In the 1990s, after democracy first came in, they started issuing passports. And there's been a flurry of activities. Much of it got encouraged during the 10 years of the People's War run by the Maoists, which had people leaving Nepal. There were also opportunities in the Gulf. There were opportunities in ASEAN. And let me tell you, opportunities in places like Korea, which have quotas to recruit Nepalis to work for them. And today you will see Nepalese in the United States. You will see a very large number in Europe, of course, in the United Kingdom. And so, again, I make this point. We in India need to realize that the only place to which Nepalese go to is not India. They are actually all over the world and in largish numbers. In fact, let me leave this little thought with you. In Qatar, where there are a large number of people of different countries, the number of people with Nepalese passports working there is roughly about the same as the number of people with Indian passports. Countries, in a sense, when they have this kind of migration of migrant workers, the old Gastarbeiter kind of situation in the Gulf, and they play the diversity card, Nepal comes in extremely handy. That's what the ASEAN countries and others have done. We in India need to be cognizant of this. This is perhaps one of the most important things to understand in Nepal. There remains a great deal of stratification in society and a great deal of political and other issues which stem from this. A third of the population, mostly in the hill areas of Nepal, are people whose origins, of course, are traced to India. But these are people who are from the Brahmins and the Kshatriya castes, and they are called what they call the Khas Aryas. The politicians, the people in the army, most big businesses are almost all dominated by them. And the domination is such that in 2015, when they enacted a new constitution, they put this domination they cast it in stone. We are all used to South African, Indian, and other models where you have steps taken in the constitution to advantage the disadvantaged. Nepal said, no, this is something which is firm. We will not let it change. Now, there are lots of reasons why they said that or they did. But this is, in a sense, the bane of the societal interaction and its sets of problems. There are the tribes in Nepal, what they call Janjati. This is a very amorphous kind of a thing. You have people like the Sherpas at one end. You have those who look like the Santals in India. the Tharus, the people who traditionally lived in the swampy areas, etc. They also constitute nearly 30% of the population, fairly marginalized. And then you have the people who look, feel, act in various ways, like people who come from India, in particular from Bihar, the Mithila region, as well as from Uttar Pradesh, who in Nepal are commonly called the Madhesis. Till the 1950s, for these people from the southern parts of Nepal, the Madhesis, to go to Kathmandu, they had to get what people euphemistically refer to as a passport, but actually they had to get a permit to go there. So this fault line has continued to remain. And the question of who calls the power balance is a particularly important one. And the question of the Khas Aryas and their interest of domination, and the fact that they say we identify Nepal with us. It is us who is Nepal. Others are things that have happened in various ways. So this remains a very complicated issue, particularly one in terms of its interactions with India. I think there is no way I can not speak about the current situation in Nepal. For many people in India and most other multi-party democracies, it remains extremely unbelievable how a person who has lost a vote of confidence thereafter could not muster confidence after being reappointed, has not resigned, and yet the parliament has been dissolved and he appears to be continuing unless the Supreme Court turns this over. Well, the Nepalese constitution, the one which was adopted in 2015, is a complex. First of all, unlike India, it has a German kind of model, 2/3, 1/3. 2/3 first past the post, 1/3 proportional representation. In the past, before the elections in 2017, no party managed to get absolute majority. And so coming together of coalitions, making and breaking was the order of the day. In the 2017 elections, two groups, two parties, both left-oriented communist parties, one, the old Communist Party of Nepal, led by the Prime Minister, Shri K.P. Sharma Oli, and the other one by the former Prime Minister, Mr. Prachand, came together. It was an electoral alliance, but a merger of the parties, whether as a result of outside influence, etc. The fact was, when they came together, they had overwhelming, sweeping power in the election, and they won nearly 2/3 of the seats in the House of Representatives, the lower house. However, this was conditioned with a power-sharing deal. Prime Minister Oli never felt that he should honor that deal. In Nepal, there is an old history that you give checks, but you don't honor them. This is the nature of the game and of polity in Nepal, and that's exactly what happened. And through 2020, a large number of attempts were made to dislodge him within the party. He succeeded. He managed to remove the other guys in the process and played that one card which always gets played in Nepal and to which there is actually no answer. And that card was to rattle up the India card. And they went to the extreme extent of laying claim to a territory on which, frankly speaking, there was no discussion also in the past. And I know we have a large number of Nepalese who are sitting here in the audience, and I'd be happy to answer them. But this entire business of Limpia Dhura, this beak-like projection covering about 300 or 400 square kilometers, was never a matter of contention before. But you bring it up somehow or the other, every single person in Nepal must coalesce around it because it raises nationalism to an uber level, and it allowed Mr. Oli to get away with all kinds of things. Since then, things changed. As time went on, he found that he still couldn't continue. And in December, even though ostensibly his party had 2/3 of the seats in parliament, he called for a dissolution and said we should go back to the people. Now, in Great Britain, it is the prerogative of the Prime Minister to do so. But in most other countries in the world, especially those with written constitution, this is not necessarily so. And the Nepalese constitution has been particularly careful in trying to ensure that the parliament remains for its 5 years. So when they went to the court in February, the court said parliament doesn't stand dissolved, go back to parliament. But at the same time, there was another judgment which disallowed the merger of the two communist parties. So now, in a sense, we were back to that old square one situation. Everybody was jostling for power, but Mr. Oli was unable to win the majority in the parliament. However, the president is from his party, and I don't want to make too many comments on that. The two of them acting together reappointed him. He was unable to seek another vote of confidence, even though the other side, the opposition parties, came together with a list of MPs which was more than the halfway mark. The president disallowed it and simply dissolved the parliament again. The case is back in the court. We can discuss this matter, but this is not, this is something which in Nepal, that is sticking to the chair, not letting go, finding every single means to do it, is par for the course, and we must understand that's the way it is. It goes back to the court. Will the court again uphold best constitutional practices as it did in February? I don't know. Very difficult to say what the court might say. We will all have differing interpretations of the different sections of the Nepalese constitution. But even if supposing it goes back to no dissolution, the parliament gets reconvened, will the opposition people really have the numbers, the same 146 people who have gone to the court and petitioned that the parliament be not be dissolved and be reconstituted and be brought back? Will they still stand together? It's anybody's guess. Any amount of horse trading, deal making, etc., is par for the course till the minute when it happens. And so we just have no choice but to wait and watch on what happens. Let me come to India-Nepal ties. They're truly unique. There must be hardly any countries in the world where there are the kinds of relationships that we have. When I was in Nepal, I used to often be asked this question, and I racked my brain quite a lot, and then came up with one possible example, and please excuse me if it doesn't really fit the bill. It's not even the US and Canada. It is perhaps Ukraine and Russia. But let's leave that aside. Nepal, as I mentioned to you, likes or very much is rooted to the idea of a yam between India and China. But it is in South Asia. That's how it has always been classified, below the Himalayas. The links on the other side, no one says there were no links. But the amount of those links, the quality and the quantity of the links cannot be at all in any way anything like the kind of links that we have on the Indian side. And in fact, the common way of describing it is what is called roti beti ka rishta. Many in Nepal nowadays particularly don't favor this because they think it seems some kind of a big brother, a hegemonistic kind of relationship. But no, it's the nature of the relationship with people. In fact, most of not just my colleagues, I don't think many people in India can understand what an open border means. It is only when you go to the India-Nepal border that you realize what an open border means. Perhaps the only other examples are the Schengen countries in Europe, where you don't get to know that you were annotation request. I have no idea. Where you perhaps don't realize that you're crossing the border. When young diplomats would get posted to my embassy in Kathmandu, the very first thing I would ask them to do is to take a flight, go to the border and see what an open border means, because none of us know what it means. That you just walk across, people are going across even for everyday matters. And even though we have checks, etc., at the border on both sides, the fact of this openness is something which is absolutely unique by standards anywhere. Now, I mentioned to you something about old diplomatic ties. Let me say something which is again a little interesting. India, the British Raj had diplomatic, if you can call it, envoy relationships with Kathmandu. There was a British resident there from somewhere after the Treaty of Sugauli in 1816. In fact, the first time a resident was to go there was after the war in 1794. But the Nepalese, even though they lost the war, were clever enough not to let a resident come. But after the Treaty of Sugauli in 1816, the British made sure that the resident would be stationed in Kathmandu. In fact, India House is as a result of that particular legacy, and that's the nature of the relationship. So before 1947, Nepal actually had, if you can call these diplomatic relations, only really with Britain. And let me say, after the 1923 treaty, which was yet another treaty which was signed after Nepal also helped Britain in First World War, it remains a matter of some degree of discussion whether the relationship was with New Delhi or was it with London, and in some senses Delhi only acted as an agent of London, because Nepal also established a kind of legation from 1945 onwards in London. Yes, they did not apply for the United Nations, and it took many years because the Russians kept vetoing their desire to join the United Nations, calling them sort of characters who were being put up there by the Brits. But we did establish diplomatic ties with them in 1947. And interestingly, this would interest some of your colleagues, the first Indian ambassador was Surjit Singh Majithia, Harsimrat Kaur Badal's grandfather, from an illustrious family from the Punjab with lots of lands in the Gorakhpur area, etc. Among various things that he did was literally introduce flying into Nepal, because he came by a Dakota which was brought by his cousin who happened to own it, and so on and so forth. And the only other Sikh who has been to Nepal as ambassador was yours truly, exactly 70 years later. And I would say I was very cherished to be there, because that was the time that we were marking worldwide 550 years of Guru Nanak's birth. And the small but very interesting ties with Nepal or Sikhs, their presence there and the relationship was something that I was allowed to, partake of and be party to. So some of these things are coincidences, they happen. The seminal treaty or the seminal agreement binding India and Nepal is the 1950 Treaty of Friendship. Now in Nepal, different people at lots of time keep saying, we must amend it, it's not good for the Nepalese, it doesn't seem to favor us, etc. What does the treaty really say? It talks of open borders and it talks of national treatment of nationals of both the countries. So Nepalese can come to India, work in India, do everything. They don't require any work permits, they need nothing. Similarly, so can Indians, but that has not been such an easy task. On account of a variety of reasons, the Nepalese have introduced various kinds of forms which are like work permits. But the fact of the matter is, we all accept it in various ways. There are lots of ups and downs to it, and that's the nature of the game. Now we come to this question of migration. Most of us in India believe that all the Nepalese who are outside are all in India. Well, the number of Nepalese who are in India and who may not have taken Indian citizenship or may not have been eligible for that is significant. But I want to tell you that the number of Indians also working in Nepal, not just as professionals, but doing lots of other work, especially as Nepalese are almost favored people to go for work-related things in the Middle East, in Southeast Asia, etc. And hence jobs become available as development prospects is not small. Of course, we have to take care of issues such as misuse by criminals, terrorists. What should I tell you? Let me tell you a nice little fun story. Two people in Delhi remember a chap called Ram Rahim Baba. When Ram Rahim Baba, who was accused of all kinds of sexual and other crimes, was arrested, many people turned around and said that his favorite, there was this lady, had run away and had been whisked away to Nepal by Manisha Koirala. And there were journalists all over the place running around Manisha Koirala's home. And she called me and said, Ambassador, who is this lady? I've never heard of her name. And I said, what's the matter? She says, I've got 50 or 100 journalists asking me, where have I hidden her from the Indian police and why am I hiding her? This is the nature of the game. I know these things do happen. I know that misuse has been taken of the open border, but I do believe that most of these are things that, well, with better abilities, better things, we would be able to manage. Then we have unique defense cooperation. India recruits Gorkhas for the Indian Army. Every year, about 3,000 to 4,000 are recruited. At any given time, there are nearly 30,000 of them. And our contribution to the Nepalese economy runs into thousands of crores in terms of pension benefits and in terms of the salaries which the Gorkhas were serving. They have been some of the most exemplary soldiers in the Indian Army. And we are, as an army, as a nation, extremely proud of their service. Gurkhas also serve in the British Army. They also serve through the British Army in the Singapore Police, in Brunei. Earlier, they used to be stationed in Hong Kong, but that's over. The chiefs of the two armies received the honorary rank of general. This is a very unique kind of situation, but it again reflects the very close relationships that the two armies have had. In the past, most of the weaponry of the Nepalese armies used to be Indian, but there have been a number of issues as a result of that, and things are changing as far as the Nepalese army. Now we come to partnerships. You know, the oldest partnerships that India undertook once we started our development cooperation programs, all the way from the 1950s, were with Nepal. In fact, Dr. Vermani and others would recall a famous thing called the India Cooperation Mission. We then moved out of words such as aid to cooperation and then have moved to the words like partnership. But if I leave all that in the past on one side, the largest project in Nepal, which is the 900 megawatt hydroelectric power station, is Arun 3. And that's being built by SJVNL of India. There is no other project in Nepal of its size and dimension. And they've now, I believe, also got a lower Arun project. This is the nature of the thing. The Nepal imports almost all of its oil and it comes through India. The biggest issue used to be, oh, the blockade, we won't let the trucks go, and so on. So this pipeline was built from Barauni, basically, where the Indian Oil has its depots in India, to Amlekhganj, where the Nepal Oil Corporation had about 30, 40 odd kilometers, built in record time of 1.5 years against a 3-year time that was done. And now this entire question of petroleum products not coming through will not arise. Of course, now Nepal needs to know what it wants to do with this flush of, of petroleum products. This is the nature of the cooperation. Roads. Of course, we built all the roads in the past. So did the Chinese. But we are heavily involved with Nepal in financing the construction of roads because Nepalese contractors are now fairly good by themselves. And secondly, the rules and regulations in Nepal, including on acquisition of land, managing labor, are such and so complex that Indian companies invariably find themselves on the wrong side of the law, find themselves caught up in various things, and more than anything else, it is no longer very profitable for large Indian companies. You know, in the old days, the largest and best Indian companies used to go to Nepal because they thought of it as large projects. Today, each and every one of them, I can take Shapurji, we can take the Tatas, L&T, all of them did projects in Nepal 40, 50 years back. Today, you ask them, they said no. The projects in India are 10 times larger. The projects overseas that they do are huge and massive. Things have changed. We need to understand that. But I believe very, very importantly, we need to be engaged with our best in Nepal because it is particularly important. I've mentioned to you humanitarian assistance. When the earthquake struck Nepal in 2015, there's absolutely no doubt you can talk about everyone else. But the largest amount of instant relief that was provided, and thereafter the rehabilitation, building of 80,000 houses in the affected district. Obviously, it had to be done by India. It was done by India. It's all in partnership, and we are happy and very proud for this partnership. Some reason I am not able to take this further. Yeah. So, yeah. Look at the trade, Nepal's trade. You know, this is an economics-oriented grouping. 65%, 2/3 of Nepal's trade is with India. 2/3 of Nepal's exports come to India. And 2/3 of Nepal's imports come from India. And now I want to make a point. Sir, Nepal is invariably among the top 10 Indian export destinations. But I want to point out something to you. United States, United Arab Emirates, and China are in the region of between 35, 40 and 10-15 billion dollars exports from India. After that, the next 8-10 countries are all in the region of about $8 to $5 billion. Nepal is about 7.5, but I want to tell you with open borders and the state of play there, believe me, more than 50% of what is reported comes unofficially. And I'm willing to say that for most Indian companies, Nepal, who are in the export business, Nepal would be in the top 5 export destinations for India. We used to do export fairs, etc. there. And I found that most Indian companies which operated there, and I'll give you one little example. Those of you who wear spectacles may have heard in the last few years the name of a company called Lenscraft. It's become very popular in India. The CEO came there and he kept asking me, where should I open my showrooms? And of course, we gave him whatever we could. Then I told him, I hope you have showrooms in northern Bihar and in northern parts of UP. And he looked at me and he said, my God, the penny dropped. Now I know why these districts have unbelievably high amount of consumption of Lenscraft, which are products which are really sold only in Delhi, Bombay, and big metros. Now I know where they are going. Wow, that's the nature of it. In terms of investors, yes, for the last so many years we've heard, oh, China is the largest investor. Nothing. These are only in terms of conversation items, making various promises at various fairs. In reality terms, everybody, the governor of the Reserve Bank of Nepal, everyone, money really comes in from India. And even if you talk about this round tripping and stuff like that, isn't it all in India? And then let me make another point to you, which is not often made. Nepalese who have money, where do you think they invested? They invest in India. One of our largest homeopathic company is run by a very large Nepalese investor, the owner of Everest Bank, Shrestha. This is the homeopathic company. The so-called richest Nepali, Mr. Binod Chaudhary, what is it that they invest in to make themselves the richest players? Large investors in the Tata Group of hotels in India, in Southeast Asia, in the Gulf, and elsewhere. This is the nature of the relationship which is there between the two. And now I want to come, I'll take just 5 minutes over the most important. Sir, I mentioned to you nationalism. You know, this is something which has always been there. We can call it from the beginning an issue of identity differentiation. But in democracies, this identity differentiation has been taken to a fairly large and an extreme element. In fact, it's almost saying that if you want to win elections, don't be seen as pro-India. And if you can project yourself as anti-India, you win. That's exactly what Mr. Oli did in 2017. This is something that we all need to understand. Is there a way out of it? I don't know. But I believe that as India grows economically, as we are able to perhaps meet the aspirations of a changing Nepal, I want to say this again. As we are able to meet the aspirations of a changing Nepal, which for the last 10 years was perhaps difficult for us to do, just as it was difficult for us to do within India. Otherwise, China wouldn't have been our largest trading partner. So many things would not have happened as far as India is concerned. We need to understand, but at the same time, we need to remain cognizant that there is a changing Nepal. A middle class is developing. Remittances. Nepal receives remittances. It's the 5th most dependent country on remittances in the world, the others being Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, some South Pacific country, and so on. It receives remittances almost to the extent of roughly about a quarter of its GDP. They are changing Nepal. They are also changing Nepal because in every village in Nepal you go, everybody has a smartphone. Why? Because it's important for them to be in touch with their near and dear. Facebook, speaking on these things is normal. And I'll tell you, I had the privilege of traveling to an Infosys campus with a Prime Minister of Nepal, and they made a big presentation on mobiles and applications in India for use of mobile phones for delivery of various things. And after a little while, the Prime Minister's wife turned around and said, why mobile phones? Don't they have smartphones? Because that's the nature of Nepal. There is a changing element which we in India need to understand and recognize. It's a different country, so it's not like a Mufassal India, if I may use that expression. I think the role of China, I'd be very happy. Sorry, has this got cut off? What did I do? Can you all see it back?
No, sir.
Sir, otherwise I'll just speak up. I don't know what I pressed and something went. You're sharing your screen. What should I do?
Just open the PPT
Yeah, that's exactly what I've done.
and make
Sir,
it
go
full,
to the
full screen.
yes, sir, PPT.
Make it full screen.
It is coming,
It
sir.
is full screen, isn't it?
No.
What is it right now?
And
I
click the
should say
correct
start from the
from
beginning.
current slide.
click,
Yeah.
double
You
click
can
on
click on
the PPT.
Yeah, you can click the current slide.
Yeah, can you all see it now? Can you see it?
The second option from the
Sir, we can
Make
see it, but it is
double
not
click,
full
please.
screen.
second option from the
It's
top
not
left.
full screen. What
Yes,
do I
sir,
do
but
to
we
make
can
it
see
full
it.
screen?
Sir, kindly
Very sorry about this.
do the slideshow again, sir, which you did in the beginning. You did slideshow in the beginning, sir.
Yes,
So,
sir.
yes,
Yes, sir.
yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes,
That's
sir.
Now it's okay.
okay. Very sorry about this. This thing always, because you touch these things and something happens. Resurgent China. I think, I'm sorry, I have not touched upon this because I think that would be the questions. Look, China has a 1,400-kilometer border with Nepal. There have been old relations between Nepal and Tibet. Now, China, we can keep arguing on that particular aspect, but the fact of the matter is there have been these old relations, and in the Nepalese mind, let us understand there is a feeling that if something goes wrong, they could find themselves tremendously threatened by China. And just as we think that there are issues in terms of our relationship with Nepal and how important it is, in the minds of a Nepalese, it is equally important for them to keep the Chinese somewhat happy, if I may use an expression like that. The Chinese now have money, a hell of a lot of it. They are willing to invest, and they have no compunction in investing in Nepalese politicians, whether it means trying to buy off people, to take various things, no compunctions at all. And I'm afraid that's the way many of these things happen in the real world, everywhere in the world. They are also much interested in investing in elements in Nepal. First, there is hydropower. Would they be able to transfer it back to Nepal? Current technologies make it very difficult, but we don't know what can happen in the future. You look at the links, the railway links that they are proposing, or the road links. Do you really think that they're proposing these links because the 30 million strong Nepal is a great market for China, and to traverse the entire length of Tibet, which is one of the most expensive things to do? No. Their interest is to reach across to us. I'm afraid that's where the cul-de-sac is. Therefore, many times people in Nepal feel very happy. They think they are the end. I had to often remind people that, if it's a train running at 300 kilometers an hour, it'll whiz past Nepal, and I'm not sure they'll even pay you transit toll taxes. So think about what is happening. But, the nature of this game is such, and it's been played for such a long time. And there's been no change, whether it's democracy or whether it was the Raja and the monarchy. They all played this game because they see advantage for themselves. They see themselves as being able to play on these vulnerabilities of India. And yes, there are these particular opportunities. And for them, the way of looking at it is somewhat different from the way we look at it. I also want to draw your attention to the issue of globalization. And of course, on Resurgent China, I must mention, if there is a communist party in power, and if there are 2-3 communist parties, there is a kind of general advantage which occurs to another communist power. It used to be Russia in the past, but now the Chinese. People have a sort of a feeling. In fact, if I may say this, in the year 2017, when Mr. K.P. Sharma Oli and the Nepali Communist Party won power at the federal level in Nepal, to the best of my understanding, it was the first time in a multi-party election anywhere in the world, a party which was called a communist party won absolute power. But the world was besotted by Donald Trump. Nobody had the time to notice this. Otherwise, believe me, they might have even featured on the cover of Time magazine, but it didn't happen. Nobody paid attention to it. The Chinese certainly were paying attention. This was fertile ground. after a gap of 20 years, a major Chinese leader, this time President Xi Jinping, came to Nepal, but he came to Nepal after spending 2 days in Mahabalipuram in India. So please note these particular things. They are very active. They see themselves being able to take advantage of various things. And let me make another point to you. The Chinese economy today is so large that the biggest and best of Chinese firms are at it in Europe and the United States. Perhaps the next round of people are at it in India and in several other parts of the world like Latin America, maybe some parts of Europe. But they also have tier 3 who are big enough to go abroad. And Nepal, etc., are ideal for them. Individuals wish to go across. As I mentioned, in the case of India, you have either the best, the second best is not yet developed. The best today has other options. The second best is perhaps not good enough to be able to do it. So you see a lot of China all around. But if I look at it, it's also in some senses mirroring a kind of lot of China in India, isn't it? Whether our Ganesh statues or okay, but now I want to, I want to draw your attention to something which in India is never raised, and that is the role of the West. You know, this insurgency, the people's war. आप जरा इसको म्यूट करेंगे आप लोग जरा म्यूट करेंगे अपना
Please, requesting everybody to please mute their mics.
Sir,
Naveen
in
Bhatrai,
India,
please mute your mic.
so in India, we pay very little attention to what the US, the EU, and other Western actors have been able to achieve in Nepal, hugely aided and assisted by what happened during the People's War. Because a lot of international activity got centered. Today, I think Nepal has the second or the third largest number of international NGOs, perhaps only second to Afghanistan in Asia. These sets of people have found fertile ground. For a variety of reasons, we were also occupied with other things. And each and every one of them has managed to ingratiate themselves in different parts of Nepal. Now, I don't think I'm exaggerating, but the actual figures of Christians in Nepal is very low. But in reality, this number is not low. The number of what they call faith houses, because churches are a little difficult, there is some legal requirements, etc., is so many that even in a place like Kathmandu, next to the famous Buddha Nilkant temple, the number of faith houses far outruns the number of stupas and the number of Hindu temples. These are realities of life, but we in India perhaps don't seem to be particularly focused. But this is something of real and we need to understand. Fundamentally, it is my belief that we all need to understand the changing world, the changing Nepal, and the changing India. Nepal needs to understand that it is not the same India as it used to be. It is going to be the largest country in the world in 5 years. Today, the 6th largest economy, certainly going to be the 3rd largest economy in the world. It's a growing place, and you have the best advantage to take advantage of India. But one of the important things in this is things where there are tremendous contestation for India, particularly China, you need to understand. You need to be friendly with China. No one says you do. You shouldn't. A former Prime Minister of Nepal, who's no more, Kishunji, used to say it very well. Nepal needs to have friendly relations with everyone that includes China. But with India, Nepal's to have specially friendly relations. That's the nature of geography. I'm not talking about history or anything else. That's the nature of geography. And till now, we haven't really found ways that everything can happen from the air and so on. As far as India is concerned, I believe as a growing country, as a major developing power, we need to also understand that no matter the changes which are taking place all around and our own growing progress, Nepal is strategically critical for it. And I think the old understanding of this buffer between India and China needs to be well ingratiated in our minds, and let us not look at it in any other way. In terms of simple things to do, we should be cognizant of a changing Nepal, it's increased options and a far different levels of aspirations of middle class Nepal, all of which perhaps we are no longer in a position to be able to fulfill, but we need to be able to understand. And finally, I would say, we need to treat Nepal like a foreign country. I'll make this point. I know there are so many Nepalese friends here. You want to build a railway line? If we want to build a railway line in Rwanda, the railway board with its best through IRCON and rights takes part. If we want to build a line in Nepal, of course, IRCON and rights are there, but the entire business of supervising it goes to a Mufassal division in a part of India. No, let's understand this, that today there is going to be competition. On this railway line, it's not just the Chinese. Those we might be able to take. But you'll be surprised, there are Koreans willing to participate. There are Brazilians willing to look at it. You need to be able to understand that you need to put your best foot forward because it is critical. And then I would say, build economic ties. Just as we are building our own economy, we need to reach out to Nepal much more and build these ties and also encourage them into us. These are our inbuilt advantages. We need to take them forward because my understanding is they are for India's advantage as well as for Nepal's advantage. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Just
how do I stop sharing this? Sir?
Yeah, if you put it, it will be better. We can see the other people. Vivek.
Sir, go to the top.
Yeah.
There should be
stop sharing. Yes, sir. Now I can see you all. Thank you. Thank you, Vivek.
So just let me start off the thing. I think that's you put. I think you've given all of us who are not knowledgeable about Nepal a very, very thorough and comprehensive perspective. Let me start the questions by asking you to clarify something which appears from a superficial knowledge to be a little bit of a contradiction. Perhaps there's some detail behind it which will make it appear not a contradiction, and which is in some sense, in economics, we have a lot of trilemmas. So the trilemma, let me put this, it's the, Hinduism, the strength of the Communist Party, it seems like majority are now communists, and people voting, and the modern middle class. There seems to be, from a superficial perspective, lots of contradictions there. If I look at it from a bird's eye view of different countries, different philosophies, etc. So how would you explain that to us? What is going on? I mean, what is it? I really don't understand it very well.
Dr. Vermani, you are the chairman, so let me take your question. Nepal is a country that is modernizing. So when you said Hinduism, I don't know what you meant by it, but I understand what is the general meaning of this term. Look,
no, I don't. I mean, you gave the statistic. You said 81%.
Yes, sir. So that's what I'm trying to, that's what I'm trying to say. It's a country which is modernizing. That people profess Hinduism has nothing to do with any of these things. This modernizing element of that country needs to be understood by us. And let us also understand that socialism, communism, etc. are fairly modern ideas. They are not just because in the West and elsewhere in India and in India they've been discarded. No. For a country which saw monarchical rule for 250 years, these are ideas which have quintessentially something to do with modernization. It's a poor country. So, and secondly, I must say that the communist parties in Nepal, etc., are those which have agreed to the ideas of democracy. They are authoritarian. They tend to have those kinds of tendencies. They tend to want to do that, but they are basically at best what you would say socialist. They are not shutting down industries. They're doing nothing of that kind. And anyway, whatever influences come from China, nobody says that you should shut down private capital or anything of that kind. So the most important point I would say in all this, we need to understand. It's a society which is turning modern. And we in India need to understand that more than anybody else. because we tend to continue to see it through our own lenses, and we ascribe a certain kind of modernization to ourselves, which we basically root in metropolitanism. Nepal may not have the metropolitanism, but it has the other concomitant of modernization, which is cosmopolitanism in a very big way. I hope, sir, long answer, something.
No, not long answer. Actually, I'm going to have a follow-up. So,
Sir,
okay, the last word I understand, cosmopolitanism.
yes.
But when you say middle class, are you talking about modern consumerism? What is it? I mean, again, so in effect, you told me a little bit about the communist part, nothing about the Hindu. I'm not a practitioner, so I really don't know. When we say Hinduism, I'm also just hearing the word, right? And of course, I know temples. My family goes there. So anyway, what do we mean? One is word you've used, cosmopolitanism. Then is it consumerism? What are the words we should associate when you tell us Nepali middle class is rising?
So you are absolutely right. Consumerism certainly is one facet of it. The other facet is that because of this huge amounts of migration to all countries in the world, the Nepalese society has, in a sense, understood the other. So you have issues of being very traditional. Nepalese will wear a big tika, they'll do all the ceremonies, etc. And yet, in their system, there is a great deal of understanding and acceptance of the others. So this is something which, how should I say it, sir? This is a bit of a difficult thing for us to have a discussion on. Years back in India, we used to also pride ourselves with that. Maybe things are changing. I don't know all of that. But in Nepal, we need to understand that the directional move on cosmopolitanism is not the directional move that we are seeing in India. It is a different kind of directional move. So Nepal may not have large buildings, huge roads, 6-door cars. They're nowhere near any of those. But this other facet, I'll give you simple answers. Look at the media in Nepal. Just look at the media. No one is complaining. No one is complaining. Look at so many other facets. I think these are things possibly because it's a new country coming on steam. They see many things. They don't have the ways and means of doing it. I don't know the answers to it. It's quite complex. But this element of cosmopolitanism needs to be kind of understood by us. And we need to understand what the People's War did. It converted Kathmandu from a smallish city to a 5 million plus city. Today, it is so large as a hub that we may talk about people in other parts of Nepal, but frankly, it's only this large urban agglomeration of Kathmandu which ticks and calls the shots everywhere. So in some village, you may continue to be what you are, but the dominant thought and ethos comes from this urban agglomeration, which has built up in a very short period of time, 25, 30 years, and which has brought with it these outside elements in a very strong manner.
Okay, good, thanks. So let me first just ask if Dr. Charan Singh or Director Mahinder Pal or anybody wants to ask something, and then I'll hand it over to Charan for Q&A. Charan, you want to ask something?
Yes, Ambassador, I've been associated with Nepal in some way or the other for a very long time. When you spoke about the longish border with India and what open border means, I was there with my father who was posted in Bangdubi. So for drinking Coca-Cola, whenever I used to go from Bombay, and those days Coca-Cola wasn't allowed in India, we used to cross the border, drink and come back, bring 2 bottles, one for the guard on the bridge and one to carry home for tomorrow, right? So we have seen that. In 1993, I saw a couple of people who landed up in Sydney while I was doing my PhD. They were doing all sort of courses in Sydney. In the university, they were doing their medicine, they were doing PhDs. So I could see that Nepal is now coming out and trying to educate its people. In 2012, I had a chance to go to Kathmandu myself. 2011. So the first casino had come up in Kathmandu. There was a huge hotel, and they said this is the only casino and in the evening it used to be thronged with people. So in a way, as you said, the word cosmopolitanism, or I would say modernity catching up. Now my question to you, Ambassador, is when I was interacting with these people in Nepal, both in IMF or in my personal capacity in Sydney, I could see that they love India, but they also hate India. Many of them were educated in Delhi University, or some of them in JNU, whom I met. Even the Reserve Bank Governor of Nepal in 2011 and the chairman of the planning board had been educated in India. But when I used to speak to Nepalis in general, the love-hate relationship used to be there. The academic society with which we interacted, we again found there's respect for Indian academics, but then there is skepticism for India. Now, I was not able to understand why this dual relationship. Now that you've been there for 3 years and you have attempted to give us some solutions saying treat Nepal as a foreign country and don't treat them like the backyard, that could be one. But would there be any other reason that you think why did this love-hate relationship emerge, and how can we again go back to only love relationship? And because they are providing so much of workforce to India, so beautifully they get integrated into the Indian family. I'm not denying the fact that they provide workforce to the rest of the world. I'm not denying the fact that they are very good Gurkha regiments across the world and they are respected for their skills. But what I'm saying, because we have such a long border, we share this relationship of roti and beti, as you mentioned. We have a common religion in terms of our places of worship. Why is this turning sour?
Professor Charan Singh, first, let me thank you for this question. This is the bane of it all, isn't it? Are these relationships like this elsewhere? I mentioned to you Ukraine, Russia. Think about that. Could be. Look, Nepalese in general have no issue with things Indian. All our friends that I see here are quite happy to come to Delhi. Many have studied here. No issue on any of those things. The issues are about India and, in their eyes, hegemony. And this is something we need to understand. So, you mentioned about integration of families. Let me tell you, the number of Indians who get married to Nepalese families and settle there, both girls and boys, is a very large number. The equal number is the other way around. So there's no issue on those counts. But when it comes to an understanding, remember also, this has quite a lot to do with the history of the way this Khas Arya and so on happened. Now, Professor Charan Singh, since you are asking me this, and you and I are both, we profess the Sikh religion, we have to understand something that happened in the subcontinent around the time of, let's say, 1500, 1600, around that time, when these migrations of certain communities happened from deep in India to the hill areas. We in our Sikh religion know about the hill Rajas and the entire set of issues. These are not very difficult. Now, our Nepalese friends may not understand this, but in various ways, many of the things that happened there are not very dissimilar to thinking about people in Uttarakhand in India, or on the other side in the Darjeeling and that side of India. But Uttarakhand in particular, I would mention. So, they are very strong as a country of differentiating themselves with India. That doesn't mean that the like, willingness to work, you offer a good Nepalese a job in India, you think he won't come? Today, and I wrote an article on this last year, from Banaras to Bengaluru. Banaras used to be the hub. All the major political parties in Nepal were incubated in Banaras. All the ideas were in Banaras. Today, no one's interested in going to Banaras. For what should they go to Banaras? Instead, the best paying sector for Nepal Airlines is the flight from Kathmandu to Bangalore. There's a huge Nepalese community in doing IT. That's where they should go. Why should they not go there? Today, they come to Delhi, they go to Mumbai, and better than that, they go to Hyderabad, they go to Bangalore. Why should they not? They do exactly what we want to. So we need to understand. Talking about this relationship being love before, I'm not sure about all that. Remember, Nepal as a country is only about 250 years ago. There used to be smaller states That relationship, I don't know the answers to that. But since it got formed, very soon after that, the East India Company took control of India. Britain became the overarching powerful country of the whole world. The Nepalese polity saw the writing on the wall. They were not going to take them on, and they did not take them on till 1947. They paid the right obeisance the same way as princely states in India. Nothing at all. So this love relationship, I don't know much about this. Where was it? Contestation in terms of this differentiation, yes. But this comes to the fore very often. Today, much of it is there in terms of the fact that perhaps they have moved on in terms of a changing Nepal. We are seeing a changing India, but we are unable to adjust to a changing Nepal. This, to my mind, is the single biggest issue. I'm not wanting to underestimate the rise of China. The bait that it offers right across the road, and in India, we can reject the bait at some stage. We can say, no Huawei, but why should China, Nepal say no Huawei? Similarly, the westernization. We in India, perhaps because of 197 years of colonization, have a certain understanding. You and I feel more comfortable speaking English than perhaps in our own mother tongue. But in Nepal, this is a new thing. Believe me, it's an absolute new thing. Other than the people who are sitting here and a few more people, English itself is a new idea. So, there are differences of the way these two countries have been. And we need to try and understand that this Hindu kingdom, these kind of ideas are perhaps passe. They may return. Politics is the art of the unbelievable, and many things keep happening in the world. But basically speaking, the country has changed from feudalism to modern kind of society with a lot of pitfalls at the moment. Its economics is nowhere near, and the main reason, in my opinion, why Nepal has not been able to leverage is because of this antagonistic relationship with India. I'll take a minute of your time and tell you. While there was a struggle for democracy under the kings for a long time, but fundamentally speaking, there was kind of peace. There was no real issue. And the world was willing, and so was India, willing to invest in Nepal in a large manner. For the Americans, Tibet, so many factors. And yet this country was not able to take advantage of all of that, let huge amounts of money flow into it. It could have easily made itself into what it likes to believe, the Switzerland of South Asia, but it didn't. And to that, I have my own answers. That would not be very fair to say. But it then behoves on the people of Nepal. My own feeling is that they continue to remain invested in this idea of India and its differentiation rather than looking at Nepal and what is good for Nepal.
Okay, thank you. I think we should, there are a lot of people probably who want to ask questions. Charan, if you
just a small question.
Yeah.
May I ask a small question, sir?
Dr. Mahinder Pal? Yeah.
Sir, good evening to you. I'm Dr. Mahinder Pal, sir. I'm a retired Army officer and a student of strategic studies. I'm looking at India and Nepal from the strategic point of view. There are two things which come to my mind. Why Nepal needs India and why India needs Nepal. To the second question, you have given us adequate answers that it's a buffer and other things and all. To the first question, now with the alternate available, China, first is that a viable alternative? What our India is offering to Nepal is the same thing being offered by China, except for the infrastructure development? That is one, sir. Secondly, strategically, at the Siliguri corridor, the chicken's neck, Nepal is also one of the stakeholders on the four corners alongside Bangladesh. Does Nepal give us a security that it will not let Chinese come towards that end? That is second question, sir. And my third question is not related to Nepal. In case you permit, I will ask. It was about a UN stint. UN stint, sir. India has been trying and trying. As you said, we are going to be our third largest economy in the world, and we are going to have a major influence. But where do we stand in the UN, sir? We have been fighting and fighting, and we still don't have permanent membership of the United Nations Security Council. So where does the claim lie there?
Okay. Mr. Puri?
I'm glad you asked the last question, because you asked this very question to my former boss, Sri Shankar Menon. And I
Now I know, sir.
want you to
Now I
answer
know
this
you now.
question. No,
And I was.
I want you to answer the question, because even when I was a joint secretary, I used to tell him, you're not right. Well, it's all right. You know,
Yeah.
That is the
look, he
reason
has
I
never,
asked.
see, he is not served ever in this particular angle. And Mr. Dr. Virmani will bear me out. Global governance institutions are about global governance. So I used to tell Charan, and I happily tell Dr. Virmani also, that, you know, posting guys from the finance ministry to the IMF, it's all right, but it's not about what the IMF will do for India, but what the IMF can be used by India to do for India and the rest of the world. And so, therefore, these are all diplomatic tools to be used in that sort of a manner. Given our state of play today, we have no choice but to engage strongly with multilateralism. It's a very tough call. Believe me, what happened in 1945, people got grandfathered. You know how China got a membership? It was because of the United States. It's because of their old relationship with the Chinese. How did France become a member? Because they wanted to find some kind of counterpoint to Russia in terms of what was happening in the Cold War. Now to change this is going to be a Herculean task, but you need to remain invested in it. You can't say, I don't have membership, what do I do? Arey bhai, remain there. Ye to hai lage raho munna bhai. It will happen, but you need to invest. And because you were not grandfathered, I'm afraid it's going to be a very, very long haul, and it's going to be a tough one. Plus, the thought I would leave is be willing to accept compromises, because it isn't going to happen that the entire laddu platter is going to come your way. It's not going to happen. You and I can talk about this anytime else. There are others wanting to hear.
Yeah.
Talking about China. Look, remember, for all the technological advances which are there today and which may happen tomorrow, for China from its eastern front to cross Tibetan plateau and then get into Nepal and do things is a pretty expensive proposition. Even today, when they want items in Tibet, it's cheaper for them to ship them to Kolkata or to Vishakhapatnam, train them up from India, drive up the border and take them to Tibet. It's cheaper. It's really the fact. And why are they building all this infrastructure? Really to feed 30 million Nepalese for a country of the size of China, likely to go to about $20 trillion economy? No, not at all. The answer for them is to look at India in various ways. The economy of India certainly is, in my opinion, something of great importance as far as the Chinese is concerned. Now, as far as the Nepalese, they recognize and understand the limitations, but they also have a few limitations. One of them is, as I mentioned to you, they don't want to ever be on the wrong side of China, because they also realize that if something happens, the northern part of Nepal becomes a little vulnerable, rather fairly vulnerable. We in India tend to have a different idea and feeling of this. But the reality is you won't be able to do much if something really happens to them. They need to protect themselves. You both mentioned Siliguri. I know these particular areas, but let me take you away from Siliguri. From Siliguri, look due west. It is 1,500 kilometers with a 100-kilometer depth. Do you know what that means? Both of you have army backgrounds. Professor Charan Singh and his father, you yourself, you know what that means? I don't think I should go into that. Imagine 1,500 kilometers with a 100 kilometers depth. This is something which can only be called strategic depth. It comes. It's the way geography has spanned itself out. It's the nature of the game. Will they allow the Chinese? Is it such an easy game? Is it really so possible? But this is the diplomatic game that we have been playing, they've been playing. For them, it perhaps comes a little cheaper. It's not that close, it's not that important, it's not that immediate, and they've got plenty of loose change. For us, it's far more critical, which is why I said, for us, Nepal is critical, strategic. I don't think in the Chinese game plan, Nepal figures, I'm sorry for all my friends here, even on page 30 of the playbook. It shouldn't, it can't, and it cannot equate itself with either Pakistan or with Myanmar, which don't lead to cul-de-sacs, which lead to further possibilities either in the Bay of Bengal or in the Arabian Sea. So when you look at this strategic thing, the situation with them is different. For us, I believe, therefore, it is important.
Yeah, I think.
Sorry, sir. There's
Yeah,
somebody else.
no, that's very good. I know we can go on, but I think we need to open up now. Charan, if you feel
Please.
up to it, let's take some questions from Nepalese. I see, as Ambassador pointed out, a lot of them have joined, so we must give them a chance, but probably take maybe 3 questions at a time and or whatever you like. You want to take over?
There are many questions which have come.
My
and most of-
suggestion would be to lump together three questions, and Ambassador can take up whichever ones he wants. And yeah.
Okay, let me read them to you. One is from Vishnu Prasad Subedi. He says, despite several bilateral agreements and talks, the border issue has always been a provoking factor to create hatred among many Nepali against India, and it might be vice versa. In this periphery, how can India play a concrete role to resolve the border problem permanently? Why not take strong initiative? Then there's another one. Indian Embassy of Nepal always support in urban areas. Why not support in the far western province and Karnali province, poverty alleviation and employment sector? Then there is another, sir, as we know, Nepal is in list of top 5 in terms of trade for India, but now China influence is increasing by introduction of Belt and Road Initiative. How can we curb Chinese influence and protect our economic interest? So those
Professor Singh,
Pastor?
yeah, if I may take these 3 questions, and let me start with the first one about open border. I mean, I really would like to ask Nepalese people and those who are affected by it. You know, this question of the open border, you mentioned that you've been there. I find that in Nepal, those who don't travel out of Kathmandu, even to Birganj, they are the ones who are most worried about the border. And in fact, we have seen this repeatedly with Nepalese politicians. The fact of the matter is, ask the stakeholders, what is it that they are doing? They are hugely benefited by an open border. What do you want us to do? Have a strong, closed border? How will it benefit Nepal? Let me ask you. Now, you are asking me about India. Don't we have to think about ourselves? Yes, but Nepal is intrinsic to our interests. And we think that this border and the relationship, remember, this is a relationship which is unique. This is a relationship which transcends governments, but governments are very important. They can vitiate the atmosphere. But this is a relationship at the level of people. And if we keep those relationships going, we will always have another day to live and go on. This European Union spent 50 years on opening its borders. You were blessed with them. And you really want to do this? I'd like to ask the gentleman there, has he ever been to Birganj? I'm sorry to ask you this question this way, my dear friend, but this has been my experience. I found that most people who had never stepped out of the Kathmandu Valley, they were most concerned about the border. Those who are at the border, they know what is happening and the advantages that accrue to all of them that take place. About Karnali province, sir, I don't know what to say, but I am no longer the Indian ambassador, but I can tell you during my time, we did projects all over Nepal. If you're talking about the far west, do you know the biggest sets of actions was this Kailash Mansarovar Yatra? Every year, some 10,000 people from India take this trip, which goes via Simikot and Hilsa. It's all in the far west. Money goes to Nepalganj. Money goes in a big way to Simikot. In the extreme far west province, I have myself been there. We've helped build schools. The entire set of relationships there is with India, isn't it? You look across, you have the Garhwal Scouts. Just cross the Kali River, you have the Garhwal Scouts on the other side. The bridges are there, people are there. The amount of interaction is just simply tremendous. Again, as I said, in all the provinces, we are active, willing to be active. Of course, it depends on the government of Nepal, what they are willing to are willing to do in cooperation and partnership with us. But I want to assure you, at least till I was there, the understanding was that all parts of Nepal are important. It's really for the Nepalese people and the Nepalese government. What was the third question?
No, go ahead.
There was another question on urban areas. No, I think I've answered that. Was there any other question, Professor Singh?
Yeah, just a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is one question which is coming up. and this has come up twice. So I don't know if you want to answer that, but it is true. When I was interacting with the Nepalis, both in Washington, in Sydney, or when I was in Nepal, the feeling is, and this is a question from Yam Krishna Paudel. He's asking, India always play in our political issue. They think India wants unstable Nepal. Is it true? What's your version? If you want to answer this question, otherwise there are more questions which I can ask you.
Professor Singh, let me just say something. According to you and me, who are reading Indian newspapers, in the last 1 year, the only subject matter was the Chinese playing in the Nepalese politics, isn't it? So these are things which are more a reflection of the way people see things. But obviously, the political entities in Nepal are interested in interacting with external actors, be it Indians, which has been the oldest thing, the Chinese, or even the Western actors. Isn't that true? Look at India. Look, India has an abiding interest in it. Whether we talk about what happened during the days of the Raj, how did the Rana rule end? It ended because at the end of the day, New Delhi put its foot down and told the Ranas, your time had come. You had to introduce elements of democracy. You had to let these particular things happen because that is what was the pulse of the people, and they all agreed. Look at how the People's War ended. Where did the 15-point agreement finally get hammered? Isila Yami, Baburam Bhattarai's wife's book is going to be released tomorrow. What is the book all about? It's all about their activities in India. Tell me, to our friends, I'll simply ask a question. How many Nepalese politicians have studied, worked, or done anything other than draw inspiration from across their northern border? The answer is one gentleman called K.D. Singh, who nobody remembers. He was prime minister for a few months in Nepal in the 1960s or something like that, in 50s. Nobody else has gone across there. There's been no sustenance. Yet they are players because they have money. They are players in all countries in the world to the extent they can. But these are games that countries play. But remember, it is also the people there willing to do it. Somebody had asked me a question about BR. You know, these are both sensitive at the same time. At least I understand that Nepalese would like to leverage possibilities from BRI, possibilities from Indian interest in doing infrastructure development for their own good. I fully understand that. But I leave with the Nepalese this thought very strongly. And I take them back to the words of a former Prime Minister of Nepal, Kishunji. We must have the friendliest of relations with everyone. With India, we need to have the special of friendliest of relations. That's the nature of geography and the nature of advantage, Nepal, that you have vis-a-vis India. Take advantage of that. Talk less about the differentiation. It's yours. It's always yours. But if you can build yourself into a more resilient, a more developed, and a better doing society, you will be the beneficiary.
There is one question. Actually, there are two questions. One is a question by Karuna Hangao, and the question is that thank you, Mr. Manjeev Puri. So they are happy with whatever you are telling, but the question is like this: why is the Friendship Treaty of 1950 not being revised through Nepali diplomats trying to make talks constantly about the issues? That is one. And the other is by Naveen Bhattarai. Is it true that our leaders always say that India interferes in our internal affairs? Sir, give us your feedback. And these are the two questions which have just come.
Yeah, so let me answer the second one. India interferes, or you are interested in listening to India, taking advantage of the experiences of India. I mean, I'll just leave one thought with you. The 2015 Constitution of Nepal, which is the fifth Constitution of Nepal, if you ask me or ask any Nepali which constitution of the world does it actually mirror, the answer will be the Indian Constitution. Why? Indians didn't write it. Nepalese wrote it. After 50 years of democracy and so on, they wrote it. Why? Because, there are rub-off effects. You know it, you feel most comfortable. And the relationship between politicians in India and politicians in Nepal has a degree of umbilical ties too. Of course, things are changing now. Earlier, everybody had been educated in India. I mentioned you, Baburam Bhattarai, product of JNU and the School of Planning and Architecture of India. Now, newer politicians have been schooled in Nepal. But the nature of this game is such that these happen as a result of mutual action, and there's nothing else to it. I am particularly happy that at least in the current imbroglio in Nepal, nobody is talking about India, and India itself is saying, look, we're just watching. You are contesting the elections. You have a person who lost the vote of confidence, still remains prime minister. Your Supreme Court has taken the decisions. Well, we are watching as well as anyone else is watching. We hope that Nepal will take care of itself. Please remember, a prosperous and a stable Nepal can only be a matter of interest for India. And this is something in which we have a basic interest. For any other country in your neighborhood, and there's only one other, that is not axiomatic. You can be in any state, it doesn't really impact them. Remember, any state that you are in impacts us. When you had the People's War, it impacted India. People came to India in the first place. Not only those who were running away from the law, not only those who were in hiding or the people's warriors, but so many other people came. What happened at the other side? Nothing. We therefore have an abiding interest that Nepal does well, and Nepal is a country where there is prosperity. There was another element to your question, the 1950 treaty. Look, we have many times said we should talk about the treaty. Let's see what is there to resolve. But what are the kind of subject matters that come up? When you really look at them and come down to it, you will agree with me that it's more a matter of raising from several elements of Nepalese society than actually wanting to do anything. What does the treaty essentially do? I told you it does two things. Open borders, don't Nepalese want it? And secondly, it talks in terms of national treatment. Do you not want national treatment? What exactly do you want? Do you want to bring in climate change, several other things? Of course you can. But this is a very fundamental treaty in terms of relations at the level of people between the two countries. So, I am no one to give a comment about the fact that it should be revised or not. Of course, updation, etc. is possible. But I think its fundamentals are particularly good for both Nepal and India.
Should we take a last question, Mr. Chairman? So there is
somebody interrupting. I don't know who wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, there was somebody interrupt. Yeah, you can open it. Otherwise, there's one more question by.
No, but there may have been some unwritten question. Who is that? I can't see you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Namaste from Nepal. I am Krishna Podil. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I think there is the strong relationship between the Nepal and India is by culture, geographical knowledge sharing, and most of the things Nepalese people loves from the heart to the India. But some of the hype creation in social media about the Indians always play the in the Nepalese politics and at the last time about the Limpua Dhura and the national patriotisms, and they are the forcefully to love about the Chinese. So what's your version about the why India always support the Nepal, and what are the good steps to behind the strong relationship in the Nepal and the India?
Yes, Dr. Vermani, I some of it got cut off, so I didn't get it very well. Friend, I don't know the real purport of your question, but I want to make a simple point to you. Nepal and India are bound together by geography. I am not even talking about history, civilization, religion, the way of doing things. I don't even talk about it. We are bound together in a very special way by geography. Human ingenuity may be trying to overcome nature and geography, but till now, there has been not much success. For us to go forward, if there is greater willingness to be more accommodative of each other's interests and plug into each other's plus points, both sides will benefit. Now, India is growing places and going anywhere by where it is. I mentioned to you, we're the sixth largest economy in the world. Whatever we do, even if we don't get our act together, we will become the third largest economy in the world. When that happens, we will continue to our own pace. But you have an inbuilt advantage to be able to take advantage of this changes in India and the opportunities that come your way. You can keep doing what you're doing, or rather what has been done in the past, or you can say, look, there are issues between us, but let us take advantage of this nation, which is close to us in every possible way, and with which we have open arrangements of interaction. And you would be the beneficiary because of the nature of the game, that you are a foreign country. There are many things that you'll be able to do. Professor Charan Singh mentioned to you Coca-Cola. Like him, I too wanted Wrangler jeans and made a visit all the way to Kathmandu to buy myself a pair of Wrangler jeans. I couldn't afford them in India. My parents were middle class people. So you have all these opportunities. Sometimes there are various things which you may say, oh man, they should be done, but they get done. There are various opportunities. I believe that Nepal has opportunities to take advantage of the growing and changing India. Yes, you have every right to take advantage of the opportunities that flow your way from China too, but be mindful of the nature of the contestation between India and China, and then you need to be smart and sharp in what you do with it. My own understanding is that the geographical advantages outweigh this particular aspect. That doesn't mean you should not do things with China or the West, etc. Why not? But keep these in mind, play the cards as best as you can, bearing in mind that this is a society which is well disposed towards Nepal.
Yeah,
Thank
Jules,
you.
sir. Thank you, sir. Totally satisfied. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
okay. Charan, was there a good question? Otherwise, I will just comment and conclude.
I think we should conclude now.
Okay, so I want to make 2 points which kind of reinforce Ambassador Puri. One is on aid. You know, we have been very conscious. In Planning Commission, I actually directly dealt with Bhutan's planning because, you know, and whether you look at Africa, which I, came across during the, from the finance ministry or whatever, our approach has been very clear. We say to each country that what is it that you want? What is your plan? What is it you want from us? What are your projects? What you tell us. We are not telling you. We are not trying to select that you do X, Y because it benefits our companies. But when you do, here is the money. And obviously it should be as mutually beneficial as possible. So I just do not understand anybody who says that we are imposing anything on that particular country. That has not been our philosophy. I've seen it in action from inside. We do not do that, as far as funds are concerned. Okay. There is, of course, a change all over the world that from government to private sector. We are trying to promote the private sector in India. We believe Indian private sector can also contribute in all these countries, whether it's Africa, Asia, our own neighborhood. That's an approach which the whole world is taking. It's not something different for us. So this has been our philosophy. This is why we disagreed on BRI, because we feel it violates these basic principles. I have worked myself in World Bank, IMF. There are certain principles which we have tried to promote in these organizations for 30 years, which have been accepted there. BRI does not meet those standards. This is from my own personal experience. I have worked in the World Bank before I worked in the government of India. And so this part of it is 100% clear. Anybody who doesn't understand this, I think should really go and study very carefully. So that's on the whole economic cooperation, aid, whatever you want to call it. We don't even call it aid, actually. The second question, which comes in usually FTAs. I've dealt with the Sri Lanka FTA. I don't know much about the agreement, the Nepal agreement, but I can tell you, we have had a very clear approach which has not changed. The approach is that as long as a country, small, big, takes account of our security, our genuine security needs, whether it's with respect to terrorism, whether it's attacks from other countries, etc., we will be as generous as our funding or money our per capita income permits. And as Mr. Puri has quite very strong, Ambassador Puri has pointed out, as we become richer, as we grow, we will have more money to do that, and we intend to be more generous. But there is that bottom line. There is a bottom line. No country I know in the world, I've dealt with the US, I've dealt with many other countries. No country in the world will be nice to people who want to undermine its security. I mean, and that bottom line, that problem is not there with Nepal. As far as I can see, it's never been a problem. Okay, it has been a problem, for example, to our south. It has been a problem to our west and east. But as far as I know, it's never till now, till 2019, ever been a problem with Nepal. I hope it doesn't become one. It shouldn't become one. Okay, so these are the two basic points which it's not Nepal specific, but it's a broader Indian policy which I thought may be useful for Nepali friends also to understand. There's nothing to do with Nepal per se, but it's the same policy. It applies to everybody. Okay, so let me end with that. And again, thank Ambassador Puri. I've really enjoyed it. And I've learned a lot about Nepal. When I tell Charan I have one condition for him. He gets the speakers and he wants me to chair the sessions. I say, there's only one condition I have. If I chair a meeting, I want to, at the end of the meeting, say I've learned something. And I can honestly say that today. Thank you, Ambassador Puri.
Thank you, sir.
So I must thank
you.
The chairman and ambassador for such a lively discussion, very informative and a learning curve for all of us. For everybody in the webinar, I want to announce on July 9, we have a discussion and we will also have a discussant. On July 9, the discussion will be on Tibet and the speaker is Avtar Singh Bhasin. He's put in 50 years of research and he's going to come and talk to us about Tibet. So I think our Nepali friends and many others will be interested in that. We are having Brigadier L.C. Patnaik on July 23 and we are going to have Brigadier Arun Sehgal on August 27. Stay tuned with the EGROW Foundation. Next week, under the policy-oriented Friday webinar series, we have Dr. Ijaz Ghani, who's been with the World Bank for nearly 3 decades. He is going to be speaking to us on India in near future, exactly on the lines as Ambassador Puri was saying, that whatever said and done, India is on the march and we are on the march to become the 3rd largest economy. And this is exactly where we have requested Ijaz Ghani to speak to us and tell us the perspective from that side. So next week, 5:30, we'll have Dr. Ijaz Ghani. So with that, let me conclude and thank each one of you for such an active participation. And as a policy-oriented think tank, we look forward to participation from across the border. We are so happy that our Nepali friends have joined us today, and we will also invite them for further discussions. They're welcome to join in all our webinar series, which are basically oriented towards policy. Either they are research-based discussions or there are contemporary issues, policy issues, which we are trying to address. So with that, thanks to all for joining us on a Friday evening and participating so actively in the discussion. Thank you. Enjoy a good week.
Thank you very much.
Next Friday.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much.